Greetings, citizens! You're now trapped in the nerd cage with your hosts Mark and Jay. We hope you have a smashing good time.
Yes, hello and welcome. That's right, you're trapped in NerdCage Live. This ain't just a reaction show, but a debate show and a live discussion on everything that makes people like you and I tick. So thank you for joining us tonight. Please hit that like button and subscribe. I'm your co-host, Jay St. G, coming to you live from Syracuse, New York. And always with me, my man, the Fiend from Louisville, Mark Withers. What's shaking, boss?
Hey, what's going on, man? Super excited to be here as usual. And yes, today's look back is going to focus on the 1995 classic movie Seven, directed by David Fincher. Now, Jay, I know that you're very fond of this movie.
Yes.
You kind of recommended it to me. Personally, I had never watched it before, and I'll sort of get to my my opinion of it a little bit later. But first of all, I wanted to see exactly what you thought about it upon a rewatch. What do you think? Do you think it still holds up? Is it as great as you remember? How do you feel about it?
I think it still holds up. I haven't watched it in over a decade, and it felt good to watch it again. I ended up ordering a Blu-ray copy on eBay for $10, and it was nice. This Blu-ray copy, everything was crystal clear, everything looked good. But yeah, I really liked the chemistry between Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman.
Right.
The whole, I know this dynamic's been done so many times where you got the retired cop and the younger, like, smart aleck cop. I know it's been done so many times, but seeing David Fincher's stylized approach with a very twisted and heinous story attached to it, I know it's a slow burn, but when it all comes together at the end and that climax, this movie still holds up. One of David Fincher's trademark movies, and I had an absolute field day of rewatching it, and I think everyone should rewatch it to celebrate this 25th anniversary.
Okay, fair point. And, I agree with most of what you're saying. Now, as somebody who really has never watched it before, I know it was a popular movie back in the 90s, won all kinds of accolades. For whatever reason, I missed out on that boat. So as a first-time viewer, I kind of am of two minds about this movie. So first off, my first impression of it is that it's a little bit on the uneven side, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like, that first 30 to 40 minutes, there really isn't a whole lot going on. I mean, I get that they're trying to build something, they're trying to establish the characters and kind of let you know. But the way that that's done, the pacing to me kind of falls a little bit flat. You really don't get you don't get a lot out of the actors. I feel like, you have three really great actors in Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, Gwyneth Paltrow. You've got Arlie Ermey in there also. But at least in that very first part of the film, all of their performances seem very muted, like they're kind of holding back a little bit. And then something happens right at that 30-minute mark that makes the movie just like really take off. And all of a sudden you're like intrigued. Like the minute you hear Kevin Spacey's voice on the other end of that phone, you're like, all right, now something's happening. You know what I mean? And so, I kind of agree with you for most of it. So like for the 2/3 of the movie, it's a fantastic movie. I just really have a problem with that early aspect of it. That first act really kind of falls flat for me.
I get it, but I feel like the first act is really we're just learning about Morgan Freeman's character and Brad Pitt's coming in, Morgan Freeman's on his way out the door, he's telling his boss like, hey, he's not ready. And I'm sorry, I like that dynamic between the two of them. I like that build up, and then they and of course Gwyneth Paltrow invites him over to dinner. Like, right. I think the whole point is they want to build the characters and you want to root for them because you want to like these characters because the horrific things that happen at the end. Right. And the one thing I want to talk about too is Morgan Freeman's character has been established that he's seen it all and like on top of the case. I think what really does it for me is that every time they come into like a crime scene, it doesn't seem to phase Morgan Freeman at all.
Right.
Well, at the very end, I don't. Spoiler alert: the box. This is like the new planet. This movie's like the new Planet of the Apes. Like everybody knows the ending to Planet of the Apes is same to, the ending of this movie. The ending of this movie is kind of like now open. I'm not gonna give it away, but
okay.
But at the very end, the climax there, Morgan Freeman's reaction is finally his reaction is different. Like he's haunted by it. He's shocked by it because someone close to him has been a victim.
Right.
And I think that's where the movie really pays off. Is Morgan Freeman seems to be, not shocked by any of these heinous crimes, but at the very end he is.
Right.
And that's where I think that's where you get that payoff, is because you care about these two cops, and then you see their reaction to the horrific ending. So that's where I think it is. I think it's just a build up of these characters. There's a more than enough character development, and I feel like the payoff is good enough. I feel like this movie kind of built off what Silence of the Lambs kind of started. I mean, it's a completely different movie, but I feel like Silence of the Lambs was kind of like that foundation for this movie. And then now, just after rewatching this movie, I feel like the movie Saw kind of like copycat this movie in a little bit. So I feel like this is the movie that kind of inspired the Saw movies. These horrific crimes and the stylized killings and the clues and the hints and all that stuff. By the way, another thing too is there was a video game that came out years ago called Dante's Inferno, which I believe is based off of anime. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with Dante's Inferno and the 7 Circles of Hell and the 7 Deadly Sins, it kind of helps knowing the background of the story of the killer's motivation. So yeah, this movie's not perfect, but to me, it still holds up and it's still highly recommended.
Right. And, and I agree with almost everything that you said there. My problem really was more with the pacing than the overall story. And, it's funny that you mentioned a lot of the things that I was going to mention as far as like how this film has sort of influenced a lot of other films. And the really interesting part that I found about sort of the backstory of this movie and how this movie got made. Originally, the writer, Andrew Kevin Walker, he wrote the script in 1991 as sort of this amalgam of things that he had kind of seen while he was living in New York. Mm-hmm. And, the script got passed around in Hollywood. There was originally another director attached to it. His name was Jeremiah Chechik, and he was well known for Benny and June, for National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and a few other films like in that style. So it was kind of an interesting choice as far as him coming into a film like this one. And the reason why he kind of stepped away from the project was because he really wanted to tell a different type of story. And so the writer decided to, sorry about that, that's my phone. For whatever reason, it just kind of decided to take off. But anyway, so Andrew Kevin Walker had written multiple scripts to sort of like, come to an agreement with the producer. So he steps away from the project. The project kind of like moves around Hollywood and ends up in David Fincher's lap. But the studio actually sent him by accident the original version of the script. They didn't mean to. And he fell in love with that version of the script. He was like, yeah, I'm all in on this. And then the studio was like, well, wait, we actually want to make a different movie. He was like, no. This is the only version I want to make. Like, if we're not going to do this, then I don't want to do the movie. And so because of that, and because Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman kind of, lobbied for the original script, and especially that original ending, with the box and everything, they really, campaigned to have that remain in the film. And had it not been for those factors, we would have gotten a completely different film. you know, all that said, what I do like about it is that it did set that pace for like movies like Saw, and even like aspects of The Dark Knight, where, you know, like the scene where they have him in the police station, and he's like, you know, they're basically saying, well, we don't have his fingerprints, and, you know, his bank account's only 5 years old. We don't really know anything about him. That's very, very similar to the scene with the Joker, where they're like, oh, well, custom clothing, no prints, you know, like they you could tell they took elements from this film and put that in The Dark Knight.
Wow,
you know, even the look,
I think that's what you mentioned, that.
Even the look, the overall look of Gotham I think is deeply inspired by the color palette, the color grading in this film, you know.
Yes,
and
I
so
think
I would definitely give it props for that. Yeah, I agree. I really like the rainy, the kind of dark, gritty aspect of it. We really hadn't seen any of that before. And so I think that is really this film's contribution, you know, to that particular genre of film. And so for that, you know, I give David Fincher absolute props.
Okay, I gotta ask you this. Prior to this movie, did you know about the ending, and what'd you think of the ending without giving anything away?
So I knew nothing about the film. The only thing that I knew about the film was what I saw in the trailers. And for whatever reason, I never saw it in the 90s. And so when I watched it this time, all that came as a complete shock. I knew there was going to be something, but I didn't know that was that was coming. And so when it gets close to the end, where Morgan Freeman's kind of telling Brad Pitt, throw your gun down, throw your gun away, like basically like approaching him, I knew at that moment like what really was going down. Up to that point, I didn't. It was like a total shock. Like I was like that was like one of the greatest twists that I've seen in a while for a movie. So yeah, I was pretty. That was one of the high points of the film for me. I really did enjoy it.
I know. I just feel I'm just astonished. I just feel like at this point in time, it's so hard to avoid that ending. It's, you know, like I said, kind of like in the original Planet of the Apes. Like that ending's like out there now, and it's, you know, I know that was a big twist at the time, and like.
Right.
You know, so I'm just astounded. So I'm glad you actually got to enjoy this movie not knowing anything. So so you're blessed right there. So, but yeah, even knowing everything I knew, like I said, this was my second time watching it, but seeing it all come together, and I did pick up on a few things I didn't pick up the first time watching it. So yeah, I think this movie does deserve at least 2 viewings, you know. If you saw it once, you know, maybe if you're not over that ending, maybe you need to take a break. But I feel like if you watch it again, you pick up on little things here and there, you know, in the crime scenes and this and that. So, absolutely. I think this, again, I still enjoyable. I mean, it's not a movie I need to rewatch all the time, because it's not only it's a long sitting, but it is a shocker, and it's really gut wrenching at the end. And it's not something I want to watch on a regular basis, but. You know, it's still a great movie. This is the movie that really launched his career. And I just want to sidestep for a moment. I see that this is one of the only movies that Trent Reznor didn't score the music for. However, the opening credits, by the way, the opening title cards are just awesome in this movie.
Yes.
But there's like a remix of Closer from 9 Inch Nails, and it's so dope sounding. And like, I feel like I'm wondering if that was like kind of like what launched Trent Reznor's like movie scoring career. You know,
very, very possibly it did. So like the story behind that, from what I understand, is they had a different idea in mind altogether as far as how they were gonna do this credit scene. Originally, they wanted Morgan Freeman's character Somerset to be like shown kind of putting in his retirement papers, you know, buying a house like out in the country, like getting set up to sort of like start the easy part of his life. But, you know, the fact that this film was being produced by New Line, they had a very limited budget. And so they didn't have enough money to film on those sequences. So there's a director, Kyle Cooper, that, you know, he specializes in title sequences. So he was approached to kind of come up with something that would be cheap, but that would actually give a lot of impact. And he came up with the idea of like, well, why don't we show these like bits and pieces of like the killer's notebook and show him actually cutting his his fingerprints off and doing all of these things without giving you any indication of like what's actually happening. And then we'll you know, sort of do these like little frenetic pieces, like having the actual font be like handwriting almost, you know, like those kind of things. It was his idea also to use the closer remix, and set that tone to that. And so, yeah, I think that those things, like, you know, that confluence of ideas, like kind of put together. They were even originally going to try to get the director of the closer video to do that title sequence, but for whatever reason, they decided to just let Cooper direct it. And so he kind of gave it that similar feel, which matched the tone, the overall tone of the movie. I mean, it matched it perfectly. It kind of gave you that perfect idea of, okay, this is what this movie's going to be about. This is the vibe you're going to get off of it. This is the fear level you're going to get off of it. And so, I think that also kind of set this, in my opinion, it sort of set a mold for other movies that came out after that, and even like TV shows that were sort of based around like serial killers and things like that. You know, it sort of gave all of those projects a template to work off of. So in a lot of ways, man, this movie was kind of a leader. You know what I mean? It kind of was a benchmark for crime thrillers and for like serial killer type of movies.
And another thing too is just I don't know what the exact budget for this movie was, but you mentioned it's a small budget, but this is just proof that, you know, it's not always about budget. It's about storytelling and writing, you know?
Right.
Like when I think of like low budget films are extremely successful. Like, for example, Kevin Smith's Clerks,
right,
or even the first Saw movie, like those were like really, really small budgets. You know, it's just proof is that you don't need a big budget to make a great movie. And this is like
The Invisible Man, for example.
That too. That's like a shining example. So
yeah.
And now, how would you compare this to David Fincher's other work? You know, like Gone Girl and The Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. How would you rank like this movie compared to his other work? Is it towards the top, or is it the best, worst? How would you rank compared to David Fincher's other movies?
Well, you know, full disclosure, I'm not the biggest David Fincher fan. You know, like for me, he's very hit or miss. Like he'll have great movies like Gone Girl and, you know, Fight Club, for example. I mean, those are movies that I love, but he also did like Alien 3. You know, he's done some movies that in my opinion are just not very good. Yeah. This for me falls somewhere in the middle, only because that first portion of the film I just really didn't like. But everything else about it I really thought was pretty great. So I'd say, you know, for me, like my favorite David Fincher film is Fight Club. You know, after that it'd probably be Gone Girl. After that it'd probably be this, and then maybe Panic Room, and then like after, you know, I don't know his entire resume, but those are the ones that I remember. You know, so this would be somewhere in the middle there.
Okay, yeah. To me, this one's towards. I don't know if I'd rank it at the tippy top. Definitely a top 3 movie. I'd say between this, Fight Club, and man, it's such a toss up, man. Like between Social Network and Gone Girl.
Oh, I forgot about Social Network. Yeah, that's another one.
I mean that. Oh, you understand? Like Social Network, the movie itself, I just feel like it's an important part of modern history about, you know, the Napster and Facebook and all that. So it's really, I can't discount that movie at all. At the other hand, like Gone Girl, again, we just talked about Ben Affleck's career. Like Gone Girl is like one of those movies that Ben Affleck at his best, and like there are some moments, I guess as a guy, there are moments in Gone Girl that like make me petrified of women. Right. Well, like that's what Fincher's good at. He's like,
right.
There are moments in his movies that like petrify you, scare you to death, and like shock you, and it's just, yeah. So I think this is definitely top 3, top 4 movie.
Right.
As far as his other work goes, and as far as like the '90s go, I mean, I think this is up there. I mean, it's just, I mean, I really feel like Silence of the Lambs was really the one that kind of kickstarted that psychological gory thriller. But I think 7 was the one like built
took it
on
to the
top
next
of that.
level.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Now, I kind of wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the casting, right?
Yes.
So I don't know how much you know about the character of Detective Somerset, which was played by Morgan Freeman.
Yes.
But originally, they were trying to get Al Pacino to take that role, and instead he turned it down in light of the movie, in favor of the movie City Hall, which I mean that's also a good movie,
Yeah.
But the second choice, I'm not sure if you know who this is though. Like I want you to guess.
All right. Okay, let me think. I'm just gonna throw a name out there. De Niro?
No. So yeah, you're gonna really love this, man. Your favorite actor of all time was the second choice. Denzel Washington was the second choice to play Detective Somerset.
I wish you never told me that.
Yeah, and he actually turned it down in favor of another movie.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think that would have worked. Listen, Denzel's great at everything, but here's the thing. At the time, Denzel was like, what, in his mid-40s?
Yeah, he would have been too young for
Morgan Freeman was already pushing 60, like in his 50s, pushing 60. So I think, the whole Denzel wouldn't have been old, would be too young to be retiring. So I think Morgan Freeman's the right choice. Well, again, Denzel's great at everything, and I can't wait to do our training day look back next year. But I mean, don't worry, Denzel would have done great, but he was too young.
Yeah, but keep in mind there were different versions of this script, and so it had been pitched to actors of all different age ranges, right? So Sylvester Stallone was approached, Gene Hackman was approached, Robert Duvall, a number of other actors aside from Morgan Freeman before they got to him, and so there's a good chance that they would have written the character a little bit differently. I still kind of think it might have made for a good match. I mean, Brad Pitt and Denzel Washington together in this kind of a thriller, especially since we know that Denzel can do that type of work, like he was in Pelican Brief, and he was in a lot of other films that were kind of similar, so I personally, that's one that I kind of like, lean back and think like, man, what would it have looked like? Like, would we have gotten a better or worse version of this film had the casting been a little bit differently? Also, Gwyneth Paltrow wasn't the original pick to play.
The goop lady.
Right, yeah. She wasn't the original pick. Christina Applegate was actually originally offered the role, and she turned it down, and then they landed on Gwyneth Paltrow after that.
Oh, I think Christina Applegate would have knocked it out of the park.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
I think
she's great.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm not gonna put Gwyneth Paltrow down at all. I mean, she's great, but man, there's just all that goop stuff. And I look at her differently now ever since I saw those goop videos.
Right, like that's a whole separate issue. I mean, I still think that she's a really good actress. I really like her as Pepper in the.
And I remember the first movie. Again, I'm younger than you, so the first movie I ever saw her in was actually Shallow Hal, which I believe was after Seven, and she was great in Shallow Hal. I mean, that was, that movie hasn't aged well, but at the time that was a hit, and it was funny.
Right.
And the fact that she was able to play, I mean, she was playing the same role, but she was, she had to wear the fat suit and everything. But but she was really good in that. But like I said, that was after this movie. So
yeah, that was like 97, I think.
Brad Pitt was in other movies too, but like Thelma and Louise. But really, I don't think his career took off till this and Fight Club. So.
Well, I mean, I think it was starting, like it was on an upward trajectory, right? Like you mentioned Thelma and Louise, but then he also was in True Romance. He was in Legends of the Fall, which was a very big film at the time. He was starting to like pick up steam, and people were starting to really get to know him as an actor when he landed this role. And so, yeah, I agree with you. This is probably the one that kind of really helped his career take off. But he was still relatively well known at the time, more so as like a heartthrob. From what I remember, I remember a lot of like young girls being like, "Oh my God, Brad Pitt!" He was like the guy. But yeah, I think this is the one where people started to sort of look at him a little bit differently. Like, man, maybe this guy like really does have like more than just his looks.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I'm a huge fan of him. Okay, so here's why. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, during the whole Brad Angelina Jolie thing, that was so overdrawn and so annoying. Again, his personal life really made me think of him different because I was just sick of hearing about the whole Jennifer Aniston Angelina thing. But then as time went on, you know, I really think he's a cool dude because here's the thing. Right now, he's producing a Chris Cornell Soundgarden documentary that's in the works right now. He's producing. Mm-hmm. On top of that, right after the passing of Chris Cornell, again, Chris, rest in peace, he took Cornell's kids to Disneyland, like right after that happened. So he was there for Cornell's kids, which is really cool. I mean, and on top of that, maybe you didn't know this one. Brad Pitt is a kaiju fan. And
oh wow, that's cool.
His favorite movies growing up was War of the Gargantuas, which is a great Toho film. So nice. In my book, like knowing that he's a kaiju fan, knowing that he's a metalhead and a Soundgarden fan, and he's been doing some good movies as of late, and this is, I think, one of his best. Brad Pitt, like in my book, fantastic actor, fantastic dude. I'm a huge fan.
Right. Yeah, same here. You know, I've always kind of liked him. I've never, I don't think he's been in very many movies that I've disliked. You know, like I've always thought of him as a good actor, and you know, he seems to pick really good roles, really powerful roles, and so I have a lot of respect for him. You know, I think that he was a great fit for this film as sort of like the younger, arrogant, you know, like someone who's experienced, but not as experienced as he might think, you know, and he really does a good job of sort of like, you know, putting that idea across with the David Mills character.
My favorite moment in the movie is before that horrific ending, the scene where they're driving in the desert, and Brad Pitt says that line saying, "You know what? You're insane." You know, when you're like, what do you say? He's like, you're masturbating in your own feces. Do you really take a moment and realize, wow, I'm really crazy? Like, that is his best moment in the movie. I laughed so hard because he's just sick of hearing this guy, you know, talk in the back, and he just finally just lets loose and just insults him and says all these things, and it's just so funny. Whereas, again, this is where that cool dynamic comes in, is where, you know, his partner there, Morgan Freeman, is just asking them like serious questions and asking him, well, why are you doing the things that you do, and blah blah blah. But Brad Pitt's approach was just hilarious, and I think that's my favorite moment in the movies, where he just lets loose on them.
Right. You know, and another cool thing about him too is I think that a lot of people don't know that if it wasn't for him, we would not have gotten the version of Seven that we got. There was this idea that the head in the box scene was going to be too much for audiences. And so the studio kind of demanded that, like, okay, we can do this version of the movie, but, you know, we're cutting that scene out of there and we're going to end it a different way. And they were completely adamant. And Brad Pitt basically like refused to do the rest of the film unless that was in there, because he believed in that scene so much, and he believed in Fincher so much. Like, hey, like we're trying to tell this story, this type of story that really hasn't been done before, and that is the whole, like, that's the linchpin of the story. You know what I mean? So he really stepped up for Fincher and took a stand, and you know, and mind you, this is pretty early in his career for him to do that. And so without him, we really wouldn't have gotten that piece, which to me makes the whole movie.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
All right. So so what would you, wrapping this up here, what would your closing thoughts overall as far as recommendation? How would you rate it?
So I would probably, on a scale of 1 to 5, I would give this maybe a 3.5 to a 4.
Okay.
You know, if the first act was a little more compelling, this would be an all-time favorite for me. But because the pacing was a little uneven for me, I really didn't like it as much as I expected to. Mm-hmm. That said, the remainder of the film is absolutely dynamite. I loved the performances. I loved Kevin Spacey in this thing. I loved the overall look, the environment. You know, all of those little things, those little small touches, like the sound, like the Foley and the music, the scoring that went with this movie.
Yeah.
You know, it all kind of blended together in this perfect way. And so, you know, for that, I would recommend it. So, you know, it's on, you know, Amazon, it's on other, you know, streaming platforms as a rental. Unfortunately, you can't really find this for free anywhere, as far as I know. But it's worth a rental for anybody who hasn't seen it. And anybody who has, I mean, it's absolutely worth a rewatch in the context of films, you know, looking at modern films, what this movie has meant to those movies.
Absolutely. I'm going to be a little bit more generous. I'm going out of 10 here. I'm going to say 8.5 out of 10. It still feels just as good as the first time I watched it. Again, it's a slow burn. If you don't mind the slow burn, the payoff is fantastic. If you don't know the ending of this movie, just find out for yourself, because I'm not going to ruin it for nobody. I feel like this is a movie that you have to see. If you've seen it already, I'd say it's worth a rewatch. Again, not something I'm going to spend. It's not going to be a movie I'm going to watch every year, because it's really a heinous and like gut-wrenching movie. So for me, it's a solid 8.5, because you know what? At the end of the day, this is an unforgettable movie.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
So just real quick, just want to thank everybody for coming into our last stream. We had a field day with our friend Joseph Spiller, and this coming stream, we're going to have our friend of NewYorkStateMusic.com, Pete Mason. He also runs a website called Fan Art, where he does a lot of pictures of a fish. He's a huge fish fan, but he's a diehard movie buff and a comic buff, so we're looking forward. Also, tomorrow is the Emmys, so we get to see who's right.
Yes.
Well, no, that's tonight. It's tonight.
It's tonight, yeah.
I feel like today's Saturday, but yeah, at the time of this recording, the Emmys will be tonight, so we are looking forward to see what our results are going to be. So we will lightly touch on that on our stream, and we'll definitely do the results next weekend, see who was right. As well, we're going to do another look back next weekend. King of New York turns 30 next week.
Amazing movie.
Yes, we cannot wait to go back into this movie. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, Christopher Walken, Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, it's an absolute legitimate classic. Anybody who hasn't watched that yet needs to get on that immediately.
Yes. So we appreciate everybody's support. So, you know, before we go, we ask you to pretty please like, comment, ring that bell, subscribe, and spread that shit like syphilis. So the USA from Louisville to Syracuse, so all of our friends and fans around the world at NerdCage Live, enjoy life, stay safe, and good night.
Sayonara.
Sir. That was fun.
Ooh, trying to get out of the NerdCage, are ya? Well, before you go, hit that subscribe button. And if you're really intrigued, ring that bell. Thank you for dropping by. Until next time, tell everyone you know about NerdCage Live!